What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Mongols podcast. I am Steve Mattias. With me is Josh Brokaw and Dhruv Mondo Nathwani. We're going to break down the game that happened last night. But before we do that, and so you guys have realized Mike's not with us. Mike usually says something, so we're going to say it now. Let's go.
And I guess I'm going to say as well.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So guys, we got some things to talk about last night. But before we get into the evening yesterday, what's been going on lately? Josh, how you doing?
Good. I just got back a little bit ago from a cookout at a friend's house.
Nice.
We had about 10 people hanging out. It was kind of like the last cookout of the season before it probably starts getting way too cold in Pittsburgh or rainy or whatever it decides it wants to do. So it was nice to have a cookout, hang out with some friends, be somewhat tired from, the long day yesterday going into a cookout. But yeah,
great day for it too. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
marvelous today.
In the morning, it was so rainy. I was like, oh no. And then by the time it got around 2:00, 3:00 when the cookout was, it was perfect. So
nice.
No complaints.
Yeah. Mondo, what's been going on?
Actually, I was just at Strides Against Breast Cancer this morning down on the North Shore. That was banging. Nice. I was there full Mondo.
Sweet.
So I probably saw some of you out there. Hello. That was in fact me. There is not another one.
Nice.
And I did manage to remember to mark the extra win on my shoulder bell. Our win last night before heading down there. There were a few people who asked about that. So,
nice.
I'm just glad you had practice last week and could exercise that again this week. Yeah, cool. Pretty low-key week for me work-wise. I did get to go on a Friends of the Riverfront event yesterday. It was a fall photography ride. So I'd say there's probably 15, 18 people there kind of riding along the river trail along the inside of the Allegheny River. So from the strip down to the point and whatnot, and just kind of looking for some cool spots to take some pictures. So that was a bit of fun. One of the really cool things about it is at Point State Park, they had the grass between the fountain and the bridge closed off, I guess for let the grass regrow and rebound and whatnot. But it was a really cool spot to take a picture of downtown from there because you were getting a picture without anybody on the grass. So it was really clean, just a different view than what I'm used to seeing. So that was kind of cool. Another great day yesterday. And I got to go to Novo Food Hall finally, which has been on my list, which was a great time. So walk around the terminal some more. Josh, we were talking about the terminal. So got ice cream at the ice cream shop in Postman Books.
Cool Oddballs ice cream. Oddmans? I think it's Oddman or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. Something man. Yeah. But yeah, Josh and I and Liz were hanging out on Wednesday. So we were talking about that. So cool to actually then be there and get to walk in and see some of the things we had been talking about. So, the Hounds won, I feel, pretty decisively and comfortably against second place Charleston, which I think if you listen to the preview show, Justin brought up a great point about how we've been basically level with Birmingham or with Charleston on points for the past few months. And so on the surface where you're looking at us in the table, maybe it doesn't seem like it should be an even matchup, but it didn't seem like it was an even matchup. And it seemed like we were the better team throughout most of the game. So yeah, I mean, initial reactions to the game before we get into what actually happened. Mondo?
We played in spite of only scoring 2 goals, that was perhaps the most well-played game just all around that I've seen. There were like not to pick specific moments yet, but there were just moments where players were just connected without having to say a word, without having to look, gesture, and they knew what page they were on, they knew what book they were reading, and unlike earlier in the season where we were literally begging them to choose their book for the book club, so to speak, to follow the same metaphor, they were just so together. Which is, I mean, I'm surprised I still have a voice, honestly.
I mean, I could tell you were definitely shouting a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Josh, initial reactions.
I mean, right from the get-go, obviously, having the stellar start we had, but even before the game started, looking at the lineups and all that kind of stuff, I started to feel a little bit better. I noticed that their lineup wasn't quite, all their starters. So I was like, maybe they don't want it as much. But I will say they still brought it. Like, it still felt like they wanted to win, Charleston. And it also, this whole thing about, if they don't have their starters in, it doesn't count as much, or like, can we trust it? But like all the guys that were in for Charleston, they wanted to win. Like, it was like, especially if you're not a starter usually and you're getting the chance to start, like, you're going to perform as good as possible. And this was a tough game. It looked like they were like really physical game. So I don't know. Like, it was just, I can't find anything to be sad about with this game, really. And that's a good feeling to have, especially when I was going into this game thinking, if we get a point, I think I'll be okay. And then like looking at the standings, like, how we really need 3 points though. Like, it's not going to be okay, but it will be like what I expected. So to be able to get 3 points out of this game, which is the hardest game in our last run of games, makes me feel great.
Yeah. I mean, I went into this game and I was a little concerned about the soles of your shoes, Josh, because you were jokingly talking about how you're going to be so nervous on Wednesday that you were just going to be pacing around everywhere. And 2 minutes in, that went away, right? Like, so much more relaxed after that. What you did talk about, you talked about how physical that Charleston was. And the Battery were, I think, a really physical team. But what I really loved about this game from the Hounds was how aggressive they were going into the attacking third continuously, right? Not just when they scored the goals, but between those goals, after the second goal, even in the second half, the chances weren't as frequent as Charleston was pushing forward. But every time the Hounds had the ball at their feet, it seemed like they were looking to be aggressive and put in a good effort offensively and try to find another goal. And that was, for me, fantastic, especially because I think that's something that you all have heard me talk about throughout the season, that's what I want to see from the team. I want to see bodies in the box. I want to see us going for it. I'd rather score twice as many goals and take 8 times as many shots than we normally do. And this was one of those games that I felt like that was the type of possibility. So how'd it happen, right? We got the 2-0 win against Charleston at home. I really loved that first goal. I think Eddie's finish was absolutely spectacular and heads up, but the finish was not the best part of that goal. Came off of a Charleston free kick. It was like 35 yards out or so. Defense wins the ball and sends Burton Jockeson streaking upfield. I mean, he dribbles through a few guys and then just makes a absolutely amazing pass around the back of the last defender for Eddie to latch onto. And the keeper, is coming out. I don't think he had a good option there, right? Like, he stays on his line, he's going to get beat. He comes out and he comes out just a little too late, and Eddie just chips it over him. You guys were, I'm sure, at different points in the stadium. So, Josh, were you by the pub at that point?
So I was in line for some nachos, but in the nacho line, it's like the West Lot entrance, and you can see the field still. So I'm like watching the game from the nacho line, and it's other side of the field because it happened on the Steel Army side of the field. And so I'm like watching, and I was like, no way that's going. No, did he just he chipped the keeper. And like, I was just so surprised. Like, I saw the ball go up, and then obviously the crowd goes wild. So I was just like, did that happen? And then luckily I was able to like watch the replay on the Jumbotron and then go home and watch the replay a whole bunch of times. Yeah. And yeah, it was beautiful. And Berton Jackinson's delivery was fantastic. I can't believe he got the ball to Kizza, and then Kizza putting that in. It was great. And this is like, as soon as that happened, you kind of felt like, I'm obviously no one feels like the pressure goes away, even at 2-0 in the first half. I was like, oh boy, like we got to hold this lead now for so long. But it did feel like there was a belief in the stadium after that moment, and like in the Steel Army especially, like, all right, we can do this. And so it definitely made the rest of the game a hell of a lot more fun to watch.
Yeah. And it didn't take that much longer. I mean, 16 minutes later, we got the second goal. Charleston had some forward movement in between, but the Hounds kept pressing forward. And this was another one where I'm really, really impressed with the team play. I think when you were talking about Mondo, about how people were just in sync, that was really evident, I think, in this goal. Absolutely love to see Danny Griffin flying in the air at the 18-yard box, beating a defender to the ball, right? Like a much taller defender, and he just beats him to the ball, ends up heading it back to Jacquesin, who looks like he's trying to take a shot but can't quite get it off. Ball lands at Robbie's feet as he's the late runner right at the top of the box, and it looks like he's trying to shoot it to the far post on the other side of him, takes a deflection off of one of the defenders, and still with quite a bit of pace, rifles into the near post side. I mean, keeper had absolutely no chance because he had it covered for the original shot. And what I absolutely love about this was the way that the team played together and the hustle of going after the ball, even when it wasn't the best quality chances, both from Jacquesin, from Mertz, and finding a way to get that goal in the back of the net. But I think even more importantly is seeing Robbie clicking in that way. And realizing in that moment that that's 3 games in a row that Robbie has done something offensive to contribute to the score sheet. Assists in the past 2 games, and then getting the goal last night, which him making the offense tick like that, I think is something that we've probably missed a little bit this season, especially without Kenny on the field as much. And so seeing that for me was great. I mean, Mondo, you have a really good view from your seats on that. Can you kind of describe how it looked from you? Because I think it's very different than what you see from other parts of the stadium, from Steel Army, or from even the broadcast of the highlights.
I mean, so in case you don't know, I'm right on the box line, basically, is where I'm sat, and just the clear line the whole time for the first goal. Jacquesin and Kizza are just like, there was no hesitation for Berton. There's no hesitation at all, and Kizza knew exactly what he was going to do. Like, it was just boom, boom. I also love Robbie's shot because, like, exactly, we've been begging for them. We've been begging for shots. Just shoot. Please shoot. And then I'll get to a small baby negative on the back of this. I'm sorry, but it comes wrapped in a positive. But, like, I was positive Robbie's shot was going to be saved. And that deflection happened. It was so fast. And the keeper just, it was, I'm beyond words. It was beautiful. It was great. It was one of those goals where you're not expecting it. The guy, there was a guy like right next to me, row up front. He just knew it was going in. He was already cheering as soon as Robbie shot. Like, he was like, yeah. And I was like, no. And then it went in. And I was like, no. Like, how did you predict the future, sir?
Yeah. He was like on the ground. The keeper was on the ground before the shot even seemed like it was off of his foot. It was like, and that was wild. I was like, how's he? Why did he already dive? I guess he just, because it deflected, so he thought it was going to go faster. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was great. Rest of the game, not to say the Hounds didn't have chances. I think that Charleston probably had the better movement into the opposition attacking. I'll say not quite full third because the Hounds defense was really good. And that's not to say that Dick didn't have to make some great saves. He made some good saves last night. But if you look at where Charleston was playing throughout the game, especially if you're looking at like heat maps or whatnot like that, like they're barely encroaching into the 18-yard box, which to me is absolutely fantastic to see, because that means not only are the Hounds pushing the ball forward, but even when they are playing defense, they're playing solid. They're playing high line. The midfield is shutting things down, and I think that was evident as you watched what was happening. That we kept not just the chances that Charleston had, but the quality chances as well were pretty minimal. I think this was also an interesting game. You guys kind of talked about it, right? Like Josh, you were saying how Charleston brought in some players or played a team that wasn't necessarily full strength. I think it's no more evident than seeing Nate Dos Santos start on the bench and Nick Markanich not enter the game at all. Which to me, if you're Charleston in this situation, granted, they're coming into the night, no matter what happened last night, they were going to be at second place at the end of the night. Win, draw, lose, nobody was going to catch them, and they can't catch Louisville. So kind of feeling like that. But I got to figure 3 games from the end of the season, you've got the guy that's going to win the Golden Boot, and you don't even bring him on when you're down 2 goals. I'm questioning that as a fan of the team that won. Like, why do we not get to see that guy on the field? And in some ways, I think as well, I want to see him come on the field, even if he can't do much. But I want our guys playing against some of the best players in the league in a game like this, where we're commanding and they're unable to break us down. And so, but I think that as well, like you talked about it, Josh, a little bit, right? We played the team that was in front of us, and I was talking to a buddy earlier today about the game, and Kizza scored again, and Kizza has been really good for the past couple months. And I think that you have to look at, he scored against a team that wasn't playing at full strength. He scored against Miami, and he's had some other goals recently as well, that some against really good teams, some not so good. But you have to look at this and say he's doing the things he needs to do, and he's putting the ball in the back of the net. That's what we need from him at this stage. And it doesn't matter to me who that's against. If he's scoring, and let's keep that going, right? I think that's really important. Let's talk about Eric Dick. I mean, he had a really good night again. He improves to 0.75 goals per game. And if you had asked me how far ahead he was, I would have never been able to predict it until going back and looking at the stats and doing the math. But Danny Vidiello is in second, our old Riverhounds friend who's now out in Sacramento. And he's at 0.93 goals per game. And so for a keeper that at times we questioned early in the season, and obviously Bob questioned by dropping him for the younger keepers, he's really come into his own. And again, we've talked about that, but another really strong game last night. Mondo, what do you see from Eric?
Eric is... everything about him I really like, because he is... I've seen him after wins, I've seen him after losses, and he is ready to break down how he can improve even his successes. Mm-hmm. Like, even when he was like, I know I had that ball, but my footing was wrong. Like, you'll hear him just be near him after a game, and you'll hear him talk about how he could fix what he did right. And it's like, so like, he's a very driven, just individually very driven. And on top of that, he comes up with big saves and big moments. I think there are very few goals that he let in that we can blame him specifically for being wrong for. I think there was like a couple where maybe he came out a little bit, just didn't get his hands on the ball, stuff like that, like little things like that. Mm-hmm. And he's improved. He's doing the Sidney Crosby thing, right? He's doing I can be really, really good at these things. Let me be the best at those things. And I think it almost feels like that's what he's doing. He's using that same mentality to boost himself. and he came up with some massive saves, like very last minute. I think in the last like 10 minutes, the like 4 shots Charleston actually managed to get on frame.
Yeah, I mean, Josh, do you feel the same way? Do you feel like those were massive saves or just important saves?
I mean, regardless of the fact that it's the end of the season, we need every single point we can possibly get. Every save is a massive save, in my opinion, at this important and massive. It's not necessarily that any of those saves were, stand on your head good and, no one else can make them. It's the fact that he is making them when we need them to be made. Yeah. And just Eric Dick as a player and as a person, he has ingratiated himself on this city so much. And like, I feel like he is one of the first ones to, send out a message on social media about the crowd and about the support and how happy he is to be playing. And like, he just seems genuinely like he's having a good time right now. And like that he loves playing here. And so there's no doubt in my mind that like, if / when he leaves eventually or whatever, like it's going to be, devastating.
It's going to be devastating.
Yeah, to the whole fan base because he is such a good player.
Even before he had those like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was Eric Dick. He had those like cool drone videos that he was posting of the city. Like, I don't, again, correct me if I'm wrong because I don't have the history here, but I don't think there's been a player who's gone like that out of their way to explore the city before spending that much time in the organization.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not. I don't think there's one that we've been able to see that with, right? Like that has been so interesting in a way that's available to see publicly. I don't know if you guys got to see it. I was scrolling through Instagram this afternoon and saw the Hounds reels, and there's a video of him dancing with a bunch of kids after the game, and it is just fantastic because you can tell he is having a blast. And there's like 4 or 5 kids of varying ages around him. They're all dancing with him, like such a great time. Obviously, that's really easy to do after a big win like that. But just to see that and to see him celebrating in that way, in a moment where you're not always seeing the team celebrate, they're much more focused on getting congratulations and signing autographs for a line of kids. That he's just in the moment and having fun with the people around him. Like absolutely great personality. So glad to have him here for as Josh says, the time being.
And like it's not like it's always been so happy and go lucky with Dick because like he did not have a great start to the season, and we had the whole turmoil with who's going to be in nets and having people switch over, and like everyone seemed to be getting on Bob's bad side, and so it seemed like everyone was in the doghouse in the net there for a while, and so it wasn't a easy ride to get to where we're at right now. But I do feel like he has proven himself and like ingratiated himself on both on and off the field at this point, where I am sad when he doesn't start. So like,
I mean, it's gonna be a mournful day, the day Eric Dick inevitably gets signed to some much bigger team and leaves us.
That never happens. I don't know what you're talking about. That is not a trend in the Pittsburgh landscape when it comes to that. Ever.
Actually, I'm going to go off on a little tangent. I'm sorry, Steve. Baby tangent.
You pretend like I have any control.
In the soccer world, one of the U.S.'s best gifts, actually probably the U.S.'s only gift to the soccer world, has been outstanding goalkeepers, right? And
Pulisic, but go ahead.
But he's his own. He's Pennsylvania's gift. Okay,
that's fair.
The goalkeepers are usually incredibly I could see, based on his performance this year, and maybe even based on a performance, if he can match this next year, I could see second or third tier English side coming, or even a Spanish side or an Italian side coming for Eric Dick. Like very easily see that, because he's got the presence in goal that a lot of people really desire.
That is a hot take that I don't know how to respond to.
I'm gonna throw it out there.
I think it's a little bit early, but I could see him getting to that level.
I think he could. I'm not saying he would start there. I'm saying he would attract attention.
Okay.
All right.
All right. All right. Well, so I think I've covered all the things that I think are really important about this game. Are there any other thoughts or observations that you guys had before we move on to looking at kind of playoff picture, league as a whole, where things stand?
Oh, yeah. I said I have my one bad thing that was wrapped in a good thing. The good thing is I'm loving Luke as a winger. Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
The bad thing is, Luke, you need to shoot. Like, please shoot. There was a couple opportunities from my seat. It was literally him with the ball and nobody between him and the goal, except the keeper. Shoot, please, please, please.
I know that you want that and I want that, but I think in his mind in that moment, he's thinking, if I shoot this, I'm going to get benched by Bob.
Oh yeah, no, I completely, yes, absolutely. But I'm from a fan perspective, from everything we've seen, like just the whole team, please shoot more, especially when you get in situations like that, because how many times have we seen a shot start ricocheting around the box and then suddenly get knocked in by somebody?
Yeah.
And then the other thing,
I think that's important, right? Like what you're saying there lines up with what I said earlier.
Yeah.
That is possible when we've got the bodies in the box that we've been seeing more recently this season, the second half of this season, that we haven't always seen under Bob Lilly. And so I think that there is a change in what we're seeing where that becomes a viable strategy, where in 4 or 5 years ago, in the Bob Lilly lock it down, don't ever send anybody forward because we're going for the 1-0 win, Lily ball special, that would not have worked.
Yeah. That would be, yeah. I'm glad we're hopefully moving away from that. At least it looks like we are. We have a lot more offensive options, I think.
Mondo, you're not alone. Our own Liz says she doesn't care. The guys need to be willing to take a little bit more risk. So, granted, it's another one of our Mongols team members, but I think that we are not alone in the fan base of wanting to see the team take more risks and go out and shoot the ball a little bit more.
Actually, we don't even need more bodies in the box. And I'm going to highlight somebody on the Hounds' first professional goal, Jackson Walty. His first shot, he took his shot, bounced off a defender, came back to him. He took a second shot, in, goal. First professional goal. Okay. Regardless of everybody else who was in the box.
Yeah.
Like you don't necessarily need other people in the box. Just take a shot. The second thing I want to say is, contrary to a lot of what we were seeing at the start of the season, and even where we maybe thought we saw an upturn, a lot of our goals seem to be coming from work through the midfield.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a counterattack through the midfield usually is where we get our goal. The long balls forward or the deep bombing runs don't seem to be doing the trick. It seems that everything and I'm just saying this because going forward, I'd like to see more midfield activity, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like a Bob tactics thing, right? This is not the players can't really control this too much, but it looks like when we're successful, the midfielders are keeping the ball down. They're passing it forward. Like or the defenders are keeping the ball down and we're passing it up forward. We're not just punting the ball upfield and praying, right? It's not punt and prayer. It's a little more methodical.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, those were my two observations.
Yeah.
A lot of good wrapped in a little bit of bad, or a little bit bad wrapped in a lot of good, because I don't want to be negative. This was an amazing win.
Yeah.
And just like food for thought, things to build on, like, constructive, good things, because that was, like I said before, I think almost, actually I have one more thing.
One more thing.
One more thing. Yeah, that was as close to a complete 90 minutes as we've seen all season. We closed out a game where we had a lead, which was an early lead. Sorry, which we've talked about on this show. We've been having trouble with.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, if I'm not mistaken, I believe one of our players is now suspended for card accumulation.
Yeah, I
Or
believe
Sumano, I believe, is
Asmanu.
out.
Yeah. I that's what it sounded like from before the game started, and pretty positive it is true, but I don't know if anything has been reported out since. But yeah, I'm pretty positive Asmanu is now going to be out the next game.
That was something that when I was watching the game, I thought about, and then when I was working through what to talk about tonight, it totally slipped my mind. So I never went back and checked. So thanks for bringing that up. I do really appreciate that.
No, I wanted to remember to talk about that because I think that opens the door, because there have been several defenders sitting on the bench, I think, waiting for their chance forward. Of course, that depends on Atu's fitness, because he's been out with a hamstring. If we keep Luke in the wing, that could give Kaye his first start, which I'm personally excited to see Kaye start if that's going to be in the cards.
Yep.
So it adds a little bit of intrigue, I think, to our next game.
Well, yeah, and an important game at that. Before we move on to that, Josh, any other thoughts or observations from this game?
It's more of a peripheral around the game. I just wanted to give a shout out to Arthur. So Rivera's his cousin, Rovi's cousin, was with the Steel Army pretty much the entire night, and it was a lot of fun. I'm glad that Rovi came in near at the end there, and of course we did our Rovi song, which everyone loves so much that we just kept it going until it got into stoppage time. Usually, you do a couple verses and you can go on to the next song, but everyone likes the tequila, but with Rovi. And so we did that song for a good long time, and you could tell Arthur was just like cracking up, like hearing his cousin, song go on and on and on. So it was really sweet. It was really cool. He had a blast, and it was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. So to start the day or to end the night last night, the Hounds jumped up into the playoff spot. I'm not sure what the USL site is doing at times, because it seems like things are switching around based on no interaction between some of these teams. Because when I looked this morning, it said the Hounds were in 7th. When I look now, it says the Hounds are in 8th, and I don't know why we switched with North Carolina when they haven't played today. But that's what the site is doing, and I don't get it. So there must be something else going on behind the scenes, or maybe their sorting is not based on the tiebreakers properly at some point somewhere. But we now know pretty much where everybody around us is, and everybody except for Tampa and Hartford are level on 32 games. So from here on out, other than the game that they still haven't made up, and I haven't heard anything about. I know Mike and Justin talked a little bit about it. Mondo, you've asked about it in the past week or so, if we've heard anything, and I still haven't seen anything about that makeup game. But it seems like that could be a key game before the end of the season, either to push somebody out of the playoffs or to put Tampa in a really tough position. They may need points in that game to stay above the playoff line with how things are shaping up at this point. 2 weeks ago, Tampa was looking really secure in 3rd place, and they're all the way down to 6th right now. But what we do know is that Rhode Island and Loudoun tied today 0-0, which I think is pretty good for us as Hounds fans. A Loudoun loss would not have been a bad outcome by any means, but it actually puts Rhode Island as well as a team that is in a little bit of striking distance. And then I was kind of checking as we started the podcast. Fairly early goal for Las Vegas to make it 0-1 against Birmingham, and then all of a sudden 2-0. And then 3-0, and then the game ends, right? So did not have to do any pivoting at the end or anything. So what I can say is, yeah, I don't understand why some things are changing around, but let's take a look at the overall standings. You can see that we're in good shape at this point for the rest of this playoff run. But it is interesting because Detroit's draw locked them in a home playoff game, but it is still wide open. I think Indy, Rhode Island, Tampa probably should make the playoffs if they're picking up any number of points throughout the rest of the season, the next two games, or three in Tampa's case. But it's not guaranteed. Indy, I think, is the only team that the Hounds cannot catch. We could finish level on points with them, but can't beat them in the head-to-head because head-to-head results and goals. And so we could level them on points if they don't win another game, don't pick up any more points the rest of the season. But we've got 4 teams right now sitting at 42 points on either side, 2 on either side of that playoff line. This gets really interesting for me. Guys, I mean, you look at that table, you look at where we are, you look at where everybody else is. I think there are some key things that we should put on the table to talk about. We know that next week we go to Loudoun. Tampa has to play North Carolina, Hartford, and Indy, all teams that are looking for playoff spots or trying to lock in better playoff spots. Indy and Birmingham play. Loudoun also has to play Charleston. And then the other 3 important games that are not 6-point games within the division, North Carolina also has to play Vegas. Birmingham has a decent Oakland team, and Hartford has Orange County SC. So, Josh, what do you think it takes for the Hounds to lock up a playoff spot?
I'm still holding to the fact that I think we need 2 wins. Like I don't think we can let off the gas, unfortunately. Getting the extra, I originally was saying with Charleston, we might be able to squeeze in with just a draw, and I would have been happy with the draw. But even with these 2 extra points, then if I think of it that way, I don't think that's enough to call it like, oh, well, yeah, we could draw 1 and win 1. I don't think that's still the case. It's granted today the results couldn't really have gone better. And this week in general, the results were pretty good for us. So I just don't want us to have to rely on that happening more. And the fact that we are in the situation where Hartford has 1 game in hand compared to everyone else below the playoff line is, tricky math in that situation. It makes it a little bit more of a dark horse where if we do squeak in at 8th place, like, are we really that secure in that spot just by winning out? So it's not necessarily in our control if we get 1 point out of one of these games instead of 3 points. So I say just win out. Unfortunately, I think that's what it's going to take to secure a spot. And it's wild thinking that we don't even know where we would be if we went out. Like, it could still be we're pretty high up there in the standings. We could be all the way like 5th if we went out, or we could be in 8th place if we went out. I don't know. So it's wild.
Yeah. So I kind of talked a little bit about, went through the key matchups. But one of the things that I think is really interesting is looking at what's the maximum number of points. And these are not all possible because of some of those interaction effects. But Tampa can end up with a total of 53 points. Rhode Island can end up with a total of 53 points. Hounds, North Carolina, Birmingham, and Loudoun could all end up with 48 points, and Hartford could end up with 49. And so, Mondo, I mean, I say it in that way, and I think that kind of emphasizes how tight this race is going to be over the next 2 weeks. If the Hounds don't take all 6 points, what do you see as kind of the baseline of what else needs to happen for the Hounds to feel pretty comfortable going in to that last weekend when not all the results have come in other games?
I mean, if we don't win at Loudoun, if we share the points, if we tie it.
That's not what I was asking, but okay.
No, I know, but that's the way this is going. So if the Hounds don't take all 6 points, that's what it's coming down to, right? That's if Hounds don't take all 6 points. So the question is, where are we losing the points? If we lose the points to Loudoun, I think we're done. I think that's kind of it, because that puts Loudoun, that puts our fate in Loudoun, Birmingham, Hartford, and North Carolina's hands. We're going to need help from 4 other teams at that point. That's asking a lot. We have not been getting favorable results across the league too often.
Well, I'll be pedantic about that we need help from their opponents.
Well, yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Specifically their opponents. And there's situations where they're playing each other, so it's like, oh, well, so that makes that a lot tougher. On the other hand, if we beat Loudoun, I think that takes Loudoun pretty much out of the picture, and we can maybe handle a draw in our final game. But again, you'll need help from at least 3 other teams if that happens. So because that takes Loudoun out of the picture, you're going to need help from North Carolina, Birmingham, and Hartford at that point, or their opponents rather. So I think if we don't win out, just have no expectations of playoffs. That's the answer. Unless by some miracle, North Carolina, Loudoun, Birmingham, Hartford all lose next week. We have to win out. Like I think that's the baseline answer. Also, I think going back to Tampa Bay and Hartford having the one game in hand, it's against each other in Tampa. That's the game that we are waiting for is Tampa Bay versus Hartford. Based on what I've been hearing about the Rays baseball stadium, I don't think Tampa Bay has a home field right now.
I'd be surprised if that game happens in Tampa at their stadium.
But, I think, I'm a little concerned. I'm speaking out of a place of empathy here. I have a feeling Tampa is going to be playing their games outside of Tampa for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
And that's going to make things a lot harder for them. And I mean, I think all I can think to do is send hopes and prayers to them just on that front.
I hope they can at least play in Tampa. Like, if they don't play the Rays, I hope the league is cool and actually lets them play somewhere where they don't have maybe the capacity that's technically allowed by the league. If they are able to play at a high school stadium or something like that, just let them play in Tampa, so that way they still have at least their fans are able to go to the game, even if it's
or
not
at least like right
capacity.
outside Tampa, something
exactly.
Like that. Yeah,
like I want it to be a home field advantage like they should have had, and actually have their fans be able to come to that would be awesome.
Right. That's what I hope for them. I would love to see Tampa in the playoffs especially over Hartford. No offense, Hartford, but maybe a little offense. I
don't know, having Tampa out of the playoffs and Hartford in would be, but yeah, I
mean, Hartford has been a tough egg to crack for the Hounds this year.
That's too, also fair. Okay.
So one of the other things that I think sticks out to me, I was trying to go through and figure this out earlier, and it wasn't clicking for me, but for some reason now, as we're talking about it, it makes a lot more sense. The Hounds could end up as high as 5th and still end as low as 11th. And that is just mind-boggling to me at this stage, that this is where we are. Josh, I mean, you just reacted. Talk to me a little bit about your reaction or the thoughts behind it.
I mean, you're basically saying that we could end up second to last place, or wait, can we technically get 4th place?
Indy will beat us on the tiebreaker. We can only
they do have the tiebreaker.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember,
and they already have that tiebreaker. So
Heisman can't be as 5th then. But yeah, that's wild. I will say that keep that in mind. That means there's absolutely no way we can have a home playoff game in round
Mhm.
1. Now, obviously, if some shenanigans happen in round 2, it's possible, but unlikely. So yeah, keeping that in mind.
Something really crazy could happen, and the Hounds could make the championship game at home.
Let's just focus on getting in the playoffs.
Yeah, let's not. I'm looking at the playoffs as a goal here, not as a.
So realistically, though, I see our. If we make it to the playoffs, I think our opponent's going to be Charleston or Louisville. I think, as we saw last night, we have a chance against Charleston. I'm a little more concerned about Louisville. They seem to be the team to beat in the league right now. Mm-hmm. They've kind of run away with it.
I can't disagree with your statement. And what I've been trying to work through all day is, do I feel that way because that's the way I should feel? Or is there this is feeling that we could be in 6th place? Is that wishful thinking? And I just can't like I'm looking at the games that are left for everybody, and I just don't know, right? There are scenarios that work out to easily we could be in 6th place or 5th place. Are they?
There's so many toss-ups for the rest of the year.
No, but there's legitimate ways that can happen and not be a surprising outcome for me. And in the same way, there's legitimate outcomes that could be us not in the playoffs in 2 weeks. And it's a really, really awkward, emotional feeling for me in that's like, I just don't know. I feel good about where we are because we've been doing the things we need to do. We've been getting the goals. But I don't know. I just don't feel strongly one way or the other that I have a definitive prediction. So yes or no, react to the statement. Mondo, do we make the playoffs?
Yeah.
Okay. Josh, do we make the playoffs?
I think we make the playoffs.
Okay. I think we do too, which I will say I did not feel that way 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. The past 2 results, especially after the Tampa Bay game, I thought that really was not great. The Birmingham game didn't feel great after that. And it feels great to get a win against Miami, but also it's a win against Miami. This week, it's not just that we got 3 points, but it's the way we went against a team that is coached by Ben Pierman, who has been a good coach for a number of seasons, even before he was in Charleston, with a lot of quality players, right? We talked about some of the guys that weren't on the field, but this was not a Charleston B team by any stretch of the imagination. I think it was 8 of their starting players had been in their top 11 minutes getters this season. So, it's not like we played a team that was severely handicapping themselves. They rested a couple guys. And so I think so, because I'm seeing the proof in what we're doing. And Justin's comment about how good we've been since I think it was beginning of July really stuck with me and was not something I think I was picking up on or seeing as I was looking back over the results.
Okay, I have kind of good news.
Okay.
Sorry, I've been trying to do some quick rough math because points versus conference or goals against conference opponents.
That's the rough part.
Is really annoying.
Yeah.
But if I did my math right, North Carolina has 1. Hounds are 9. I just did Loudon. I think they were 6.
Okay.
And we have the tiebreak on head-to-head with Birmingham.
So we should be in 7th,
technically,
not 8th.
Yeah. So first of all, we should be in 7th, not 8th. And so long as we match or beat North Carolina, Loudon, Birmingham, their record, we will make the playoffs regardless of what happens with Tampa Bay and Hartford. Because in theory, we have all 3 of them beat on the tiebreaker.
So you're saying that even if Hartford were to jump ahead of us,
them has a blowout
we would get
win.
the 8th with those teams
unless Hartford has a blowout.
Like us knocking those teams out on the tiebreakers, what your
Yeah.
hopefully accurate math is telling us.
Yeah, my
I don't like to take faith in that as the right. Like I want to go in. I want to be like, we need to win and we're in.
And so Hartford, yeah. So regardless of Hartford, the Loudoun is the only one that is close to beating us on the tiebreaker, and they face us. So if we beat them, we win the tiebreaker.
Yep.
So we have to win next week.
And they face
That's
Charleston.
what it comes down to. And then they face Charleston. So if we beat them next week, their goal differential doesn't matter. We have them on the tiebreaker because the first game against them, I believe we drew. So we drew at home. If we win away, that's Loudoun taken care of tiebreaker wise.
Yep. Yeah. No, I think we know that winning in Loudoun is massive, but it doesn't mean we're ahead of everybody else definitively yet.
Right. Well, Loudoun is the only one with the goal differential that can jump us. So that's why the Loudoun game matters as much. Yeah. We have unless North Carolina wins a game or both games like 5-1 or something, they're not catching up. And
I think at that point we're looking at like hoping for 6 points and hoping for some other teams to not even get those results, and that those are probable things because of some of the matchups that still exist. So
right. So I think my earlier assessment where that was a lot more bleak is a little bit less.
So you feel a little more hopeful.
I feel a little more hopeful just because I think mathematically things are looking Hounds' way.
Okay. Josh, any last thoughts?
Loudoun's going to be such a huge game. I know myself, I'm not going to be able to make it to the away game, but I am going to be watching it at Bulldog Pub. So please join me if you're not going to go to Loudoun, which if you go to Loudoun, because the more away support we have there, the better. But if you're not going to Loudoun, come to Bulldog and watch the game with me, where we can either celebrate together or have a couple pints in the sorrow.
Sadness.
And there will be a Steel Army contingent going down to that game, right?
Yeah, we have vans going down, a van going down. I think it's probably too late to get a second van, but it looks like, today alone, I think I saw 4 or 5 people sign up for that van.
Nice.
And we already had people signed up for it. So we're going to have a full van going down. And then we have some people carpooling down. So it's going to be a good group going down there. So you'll have a lot of support if you do go down. Yeah, man, next week's going to be huge.
Yeah. Well,
I don't think we could have called that at the beginning of the season. It all depends on a trip down Loudoun.
I will say that we don't usually see the Hounds getting hot at the right moment. It's usually we had a good season, and then it's like, we're not doing too great going into the playoffs, but we're doing okay. And then next thing you know, we bow out within 2 games. So us getting hot at the end of the season and just barely making it in. Let's see if that works out for us. So I'd rather see us getting hot.
Different feel than I think we've ever had.
Yeah.
All right,
so
guys.
I have a weird hypothetical. Sorry. One last. I want one last. Okay. Would you consider this a successful season if we make the playoffs and bow out in the first round compared to not making the playoffs at all? Or would you not consider this a successful season unless we have a reasonable run in the playoffs this year?
So, Josh, do you want to answer?
I'll answer first. I don't think you can call this a successful season unless we make a larger than normal run in the playoffs, because the season itself has not been great. It barely squeaking into the playoffs is not a successful season. In the new standard that is the Lily era. Like before getting into the playoffs would have been like, hallelujah, we've made it. This is good enough for us. But the fact that we are expected to make the playoffs now instead of expecting not to make the playoffs, and we have yet to make a run in the playoffs. I gotta say that it has to be a run in the playoffs in order for me to consider this season at all a success. And even then, it's like, well, I don't know if that season was a success. The playoffs were a success then. But this season, I don't think there's any way, even if we went out and, I can't imagine considering this season successful. But you bring home, even if not even saying bring home the championship, but if you make a good run in that playoff, that's going to go a long way to make me remember the season much more fondly than I currently do.
I kind of agree that if the Hounds don't do well in the playoffs and go much deeper, right? I mean, we've never won a second round game. We've only made it to the second round twice under Lily. Then it's not a success for me. I think the second half of this season, there are a lot of positives, but they don't wash away the position that we're in now because of the first half of this season. And so last year set the expectation for me in what success can look like. And not that I think every year is going to be a deep run in the Open Cup and Supporter Shield run, right? But I do think that it showed that this is a team that has the ability to be competitive with really good teams when they're at their best at times. And I think this year's team has a lot better capability than we've seen at parts of this season. But no, like this year, even with a second round appearance in the playoffs, I don't say this is a successful season. Maybe that will change after I've had some time and space and we're in December or whatever and talking about this. But for right now, I don't feel like it's been a successful season. I feel like it's been a salvage season at this stage. So, well,
yeah. Thank you for
that's
that.
what we think.
As a relatively newer fan, I just wanted the deeper.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's all that. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah, that's what we think. Please let us know what you think. You know where to find us on all of our podcast platforms, YouTube. Thank you for watching or listening to this one, whichever way you engaged. Please be sure to subscribe. We're still looking to get Mike to do some sort of wonky challenge if we get enough YouTube subscribers. So get your friends to subscribe. Mike, we've not forgotten. And because you're not here, I get to bring it up and remind everybody. And so, we're going to be back with some Hounds content very, very, very soon.
Later.
This is the way.
See ya.